This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Michael Zipursky, consultingsuccess.com. Welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, David. Really excited for this.
I'm going to start with something silly, which is actually, it's not silly at all. It's your awesome domain name. How and why and when were you able to get consultingsuccess.com?
So we've been doing this now for about 10 years in terms of consultingsuccess.com, probably about 3-4 years into that process. We actually started off with a different name, and we were going through a rebranding. We were considering all different potential names, and Consulting Success was something that was quote unquote available, meaning that we had to acquire it. We bought it, but it made sense for us to do that. It's really what we're all about because we focus exclusively on working with consultants and helping them to be more successful. So that's just simple. We like to keep things simple and to the point.
When you're investing in branding, and I know people are dying to know, and I'm just channeling our listeners, how much did he pay? Can you share how much you paid?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I don't remember the exact number, but I'm almost certain it was less than $1,000.
Oh, wow. So it was a real steal.
Yeah, I mean, this is going back now probably 7 years or so. Things were maybe a little bit different back then, but yeah, I mean, listen, I remember when I first got into consulting 19 years ago, you could pick up domain names very, very cheaply, and many people had a lot of them. So we certainly held many different domain names at different points throughout the business, but yeah, Consulting Success was one that we went after and we were able to get it.
So let's dig into that for a moment. How did you come to do what you're doing now? And then what did you do prior to this? What were all the steps and side trips along the journey that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, that's going to take us probably longer than we have to cover, in terms of the time we have here, because it's been quite a journey. But yeah, I mean, I started out of high school, really. When I first went to university, my cousin Sam and I, who remains my business partner to this day, we started our first consulting type of business. It was a web design and development company. Sam was, the creative genius, and I was more the strategist. And we went to work helping people to build websites. And from there, we then next launched a branding and marketing consultancy. And we were doing a lot more marketing and kind of visual branding. We moved away from the actual website development. And that business went very well. I ended up actually going over to Japan, opening up a branch office for that company. It was called Kankei Culture. Kankei means relationship in Japanese. And we had an opportunity to work with some very large organizations in Japan, like Panasonic and Dow Jones and Sumitomo and Financial Times, and a whole bunch of others, helping them with their products and services entering into English-speaking markets. And then upon return from that to North America, when I left Japan, I started a lead generation consultancy working with service-based businesses. So other consulting firms, lawyers, financial advisors, that type of realm. And throughout and kind of around that time, Sam and I had been building multiple businesses together, but then we kind of went off on our own. And one thing that we started to really talk about was this idea of, hey, wouldn't it be nice to build a business online? Because we both of us have spent time growing up in different countries, and we love international and just being able to travel and the freedom around that. So we thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a business that you could essentially run from anywhere? We didn't know what that business was. We thought, why don't we start a website? And what we decided to start was what would become Consulting Success. And it was just at the beginning, David, a place to share stories from the trenches, what was working, building consulting business, what wasn't working. And there was no monetization plan behind it. We didn't know how to make money. We just thought, let's just share information with people. That turned into people, being interested in saying, hey, give us more. We created a course around how to become a successful consultant. Later, we offered a coaching program, published several books through it. But that's kind of the transition. It was really coming from a place of, this is the expertise and knowledge that I have. Let's share it. And that turned into a business. And so, yeah, we've been involved in a few different businesses and selling of a few businesses during that time as well. But really, the consulting focus has been clear for the last 19 years and very, very focused for the last decade.
Yeah, boy, what a great story. And you did a great job summarizing that. That did not take up the next 3 hours.
I tried to talk as quickly as I could, yeah.
I know. Well, I want to talk about sort of two tracks, because there is the consultant who is struggling with some of the things you talk about in your articles and your videos and your website, things like, they're not sure who their target market is. They're doing some spray and pray marketing. A lot of it is, I get referrals and all these excuses we make to ourselves. Then there's the person who doesn't consider themselves a consultant, maybe they're a speaker, maybe they're a coach, maybe they're a C-level executive, and they're looking at their next adventure and they say, hey, Michael, I'd like to get into consulting. I'd love to talk about mistakes on both sides of that equation. So
Sure.
the emerging consultant, what assumptions or mistakes are they making? And then the consultant who might be struggling or not quite moving as fast as they would like, what are some of the myths and the struggles that they have?
Yeah, it's a really great question, David. And what's interesting about that is my observation is that both groups sometimes make the same mistake, right? So one of the greatest challenges that consultants have, as long as they're kind of in the earlier stage, so even if you've been consulting for a couple of years, or if you're making the transition from, let's say, the corporate world or an employee into consulting, probably one of the greatest challenges is really getting clarity around who is your ideal client. And then the next piece is how do you then develop messaging that will get the attention, interest of that ideal client. But I think the mindset that many people have is, listen, I don't want to lose out on opportunities. Therefore, I need to go as wide as I can. I need to make myself available to all the different types of people that I can help. And most of the consultants that come and reach out to us, they have a lot of experience and expertise. And so it can be very challenging to essentially subtract, right? To eliminate different opportunities or potential directions that they could go in terms of serving ideal clients. But at the beginning, that's critical, to really gain traction, to be able to benefit from momentum and make meaningful progress. You need to be able to focus. It's like a bullseye. If you have multiple targets, say you're going after 3 or 4 or 5 different ideal client targets, like who do you really aim at and what do you say to those people? So being able to subtract, and that's, I think, when you study business models over time, that's something that for me is a real interest, is just looking at different business models. The realization that I've come to is that the most successful companies grow and really gain their traction, not through addition of new things, but actually from subtraction, from removing things, creating more simplicity and having then greater focus because of that. So really eliminating and getting clear on who can you serve best, going through a whole bunch of different criteria, which we can certainly explore and talk about here if you'd like. But once you have that, then you know who you're targeting. You can develop a message for that group. You don't have to have 3 different messages and 10 different offerings. You know who you're serving. You can invest your energy and just even your mind and your focus on that specific group. And that's typically where people are then able to see much greater traction than going out at a lot of different people at once.
I think one challenge, and there's many challenges with this target market, decision-making, niche, topic, etc. When someone's dialed into a niche, then they go, okay, now I have a niche. I'm going to change my website. I'm going to change my LinkedIn. I'm going to change my professional headline. And then a lot of them wait to be found. Mm-hmm. You talk about building a marketing machine where they just can't sit on that new website. They can't just sit on that new LinkedIn profile and wait for someone to knock on the door. Yeah. They have to do some proactive, intelligent, targeted outreach. What's been your secret sauce for getting reluctant consultants, because they're all reluctant to do this, to get them to do that intentional targeted outreach?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think a lot of people have a challenge with this. More than anything, it's actually why I wrote the book, The Elite Consulting Mind, is because I continue to see the kind of the most common mindset blocks or challenges appear for consultants over and over and over. The big thing is that building things is comfortable, right? So it's easy and comfortable to play around with your website or your logo, or even spend quote unquote strategic time. If anyone can't see me doing this, it's like quote unquote strategic time planning things, right? And you feel like you're making real progress because you have now maybe a more clarity around your vision, and you have a better, marketing message, and you have a new service offering or a product that you develop. But none of that matters if you don't actually get out of the building. So it's what I refer to as like the build syndrome, right? You can build things, but you actually have to get out of the building, because at the end of the day, you make a sale as a consultant or a coach when you're selling any kind of, service that has a high value. That doesn't happen just by putting it on the shelf. Like people aren't buying socks, right? They're buying things that are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, some cases, millions of dollars. And so that comes from having a conversation, and all that work that you can do in preparation is important, but it doesn't actually matter until you get out, because that's when the real learning takes place. That's when you actually start to see if what you've thought about, what your hypotheses are, whether they are valid or not. So that's really the conversation that I always want to have or encourage people to think about, is that you're going to make far greater progress by learning what the market actually wants rather than just thinking about it. You can think and plan for years. But if you're not actually getting out and having conversations, you're not going to really learn what people want. So the faster that you can do that, even if it's scary, is really going to create better results for people.
And is there a version, like let's say that you're just dialing in your consulting offer and you're doing some marketplace validation, like, am I on the right track? Is this what my buyers want? Is there a consulting version of, if we were doing a job search or a career change, we would be doing an informational interview. Hey, I'm not here to apply for a job, Michael.
Sure.
I just want to borrow 30 minutes of your brain power. Let me buy you lunch. Let me buy you coffee. What's going on in this industry? Have a look at my resume. Give me some feedback. Help me shoot some holes in it. Is there a consulting version of that career change informational interview?
Yeah, there definitely is. And there's many different ways you can approach it. I mean, one that has worked for many clients is actually to create, like almost do what you and I are doing right now, is to have an interview, right? It can be for a podcast, it can be for an article that you're writing, but go out and interview people who you believe are either thought leaders or experts in the industry that you want to serve, or they could actually be prospective ideal clients. Ask them a whole bunch of questions. Not only does that help you to validate and learn, what you've been thinking, but you then have an opportunity to potentially extend an invitation to help that person or to add value and say, hey, we just talked the last half hour. You've told me about this challenge you had or these issues that you see in the industry. That's really interesting because I've spent the last decade, doing that exactly, or I helped this organization to fix that problem. If it would be helpful for you, I'd be happy to, have that conversation or send you some resources or whatever it might be. And so you're developing a relationship and you're learning. That's one way. Another way would be to set up conversations with executive directors or people that are involved in the associations or professional organizations that are in the industry that you want to serve, because they're typically quite well dialed into the latest trends, or they can connect you to the right type of people. And then just also leveraging your network. Like I see, David, I'm sure that you do too, a lot of people who have networks, they have people who could potentially refer them business, but they're holding off reaching out to them until their website is ready or until they can have the right messaging and the right plan. It's like, you don't need to have perfection. And I see this really quite often, where the most successful people are those who may not be, quote unquote, like as intellectually smart, or the big difference is that they're not waiting to have things just perfect. They're just going out there and they're learning from that experience, where people who overthink and try to perfect, and that's a mindset I think a lot of consultants have, because especially when you're in the corporate world, you try as much as possible to avoid making mistakes because your boss isn't going to be happy. You're going to have all kinds of issues, right? You're working in kind of the safety of that corporate environment. But when you're an entrepreneur, when you're building your business, it's the exact opposite. You need to take calculated chances and risks, because that's what you're going to really learn from. So, to wrap that up and come back to your question, there's many different sources of validation or opportunities, but you just need to go out there and leverage them to have those conversations. And that can really help you to move things forward.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. There's also a very important element of what you just said that I'd love you to elaborate on a little bit, because I know this scares consultants, especially the smart ones, the ones that know I'm, a corporate strategy consultant. Sure. I'm a big deal in Fortune 500. The concept is go before you're ready. Yeah. You take one of these serious, big Fortune 1000 type consultants, you tell that guy or gal, hey, by the way, the best way to go out there and really start to leverage this is to go before you're ready. And then they start to freak out like, no, Michael, I have to not only build the website, I have to build 5 websites, and I have to finish my PhD, and I have to write my 3rd book. And they're never going to be ready until you tell them go before you're ready. How 100%. Do you encourage someone and remove the fear factor? Because go before you're ready is a key piece of advice, correct?
Yeah, definitely. So Reid Hoffman, right, one of the founders of LinkedIn, I think he's the one that said something along the lines of, if your product that you're showing people, like, it isn't ugly, if it's beyond being ugly, like, you've definitely waited too long, right? I tell clients the story of many years ago when Sam and I were developing a new business. We invested $22,000, $23,000 into this kind of technology, this platform that we wanted to build because we thought the market wanted it. And we spent a lot of time, dialing in all the different features, and just like, we wanted to make it so valuable for people, right? We really wanted it to be great. And then what happened, David, is we turned it on and we released it to the world, and we had actually built up a bit of a community around it. And we got some feedback. And what do we find out? That they only wanted 5% of what we had built. So, knowing that, we were then able to transition to quote unquote pivot, right? And successfully then, build that business, turn it profitable, and later on sell it. But the lesson in that is like, we didn't need to not only spend all that money, but we didn't need to spend all that time, right? We could have really created a much more simple product or quote unquote service for the marketplace, validated, and we would have been much further ahead a lot faster. And imagine saving that extra $22,000 or whatever. We could have used that for marketing. We could have used that to do other things, but instead we wasted it. Luckily, it was a learning opportunity. And I think that's the other big thing for people to understand is that when you take these chances or when you just go and have conversations before you're ready, don't think about it as failure. It's not about failure. You're not going to fail anything. The only way that you're going to fail is if you don't go out and have those conversations, because you won't make any real meaningful progress. Look at every single opportunity, every point of feedback, even if it's something that someone says to you, no, we don't want this, or that's really bad. That's a learning experience. And the more quote unquote mistakes or failures that you have, the more that you can say that you're now closer to where you ultimately want to be. And so the faster that you go through that process, right, the faster you're going to ultimately reach success.
Totally right. And this reminds me of General George Patton, who said, the best thing you can do is to make a good decision. The second best thing you can do is to make a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
Make a decision.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have to be good or bad. Just decide and go and you'll figure it out.
100%. People who overthink and try and perfect, I really believe like that's far greater of a reason why people are not successful or why they're not achieving the level of success that they want. It's not because they don't have the right tactic or the right strategy or the latest social media tool or understanding the Facebook algorithm, or it's not, none of that stuff, right? Most of us can learn about those things quite easily if we really want to. The biggest, barrier that we all have to success is what's between our ears and then what we do about it.
Now, I want to talk to you about your business, because when we're talking about consultants and experts, and in my case, speakers and other businesses, you see coaches, they say, okay, I'm going to come to Michael and he's going to help me in my consulting business, or I'm going to come to David and he's going to help me in my speaking business. What a lot of people do is they say, well, we're not going to, no, stop consulting and build all these internet marketing funnels and move your business online. The way I understand it, that is not what you do. What you do is you help people build and grow their offline consulting business so they get more projects, bigger projects, more profitable projects, and they don't need to become an internet marketer necessarily like you or I are.
Yeah, that's a valid statement. So, for people who are new to consulting, or those, again, they might have a lot of expertise, but they want to build a consulting business. The first place where we typically start is laying the foundation, and that's actually providing services. Later on, when people have been growing their business, things are going well, we do spend quite a bit of time with some of our higher level clients on the areas of productization and how can they take that skills and knowledge and expertise and then find more leveraged ways to deliver it to clients. And so that might include some online trainings or certain components that are on the web. But for the vast majority, no, it's not about complex funnels or countdown timers and ads. And that's just not the marketplace that you're going to, or the approach that you're going to use if you want to reach a C-level executive. They're not going to be typically sitting on a 90-minute webinar. Some might, but it's a different approach than if you're targeting consumers. And unfortunately, what I see is that a lot of consultants, because we're now bombarded by so many different advertisements and so many offers and so many things that give hope to people like, oh yeah, I can do that. But what they don't recognize is that might not be, just because it's working for one person doesn't mean that it's going to work for your specific situation. So yeah, David, for those that we work with, it's not about complex funnels or setting up a lot of technology. A piece that I had in Forbes recently was really all about how technology holds people back from growing their consulting businesses. And it's not that you can't use technology, you should use it, because certain parts of it and certain automations can be very beneficial. But I really believe that people are doing themselves a disservice by trying to learn all the latest tools, because that time that they're spending learning those tools, they could be using to actually go out and have conversations with buyers. And you're going to make a lot more revenue by doing that.
Yeah. You make a very important distinction there, because I've seen this and maybe you've seen it too. You have a consultant who is struggling with the traditional model. They come across a Michael Zipursky. They go, oh, that's it. I'll do what Michael's doing. And they didn't realize all the 1,500 building blocks and stepping stones that you took. And when you did that next scaling strategy, when you did that next internet strategy, when you did that next either recurring revenue strategy, they think they can go from step 1 to step 1,500 because steps 1, 2, and 3 look really hard. And what you're doing, you make it look really easy. And it's all beautifully designed, maybe because of Sam, I don't know. But I mean, all your stuff is really gorgeous and really smart.
Thank you.
And it's something where if you don't have the basic building blocks dialed in, the 301, 401, 501, PhD level stuff is never going to work for you, right?
Yeah, I think the other part of it too, David, is unfortunately we live right now in a society and kind of time where there's a lot of people trying to tell the marketplace that you can do that. It's like, look, I've done this, you can do this as well. And if you sign up right now, you'll have this by tomorrow morning, right? And so people's expectations are that instant gratification and quick results, and there's a shortcut to doing things. That's just the belief. And sure, there are shortcuts. And I mean, you and I know both invest in working with mentors and coaches, and it's something that we've been doing for years, right? All of that it plays a big role. So you can benefit from shortcuts, but it's the mindset and also just the understanding that real success doesn't happen overnight and that you do need to put in work. You need to be prepared to do that. And if you follow the right path, you take the right steps and you put in the work, yes, you will get there. It may not be overnight like the guru over there is telling you can achieve, but certainly you can make real progress if you're committed to it.
Step 1 to step 75 also reminds me of another key question that I see a lot of people struggle with. They're either a new consultant or even a mid-career consultant, and somebody planted the seed in their head at some point. I have to sell to CEOs. I have to sell to CEOs. I need to penetrate the C-suite. If you're talking about a large corporation like a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 corporation, I don't think CEOs and C-suite people even buy consultants. It's people probably 2 or 3 levels down from there. And there's hundreds of buyers in a Fortune 500. Number 1, you'll never get to the CEO. Number 2, you shouldn't even try. How do you coach your people when they're so CEO fixated?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point. The buying process has become quite different, right? Back in the day, you might think there's just one buyer within an organization. Today, there may be multiple buyers or multiple people who influence the decision-making process. So you're right. It is really important to get clarity on who those people are, not the singular person, but who those people are. And also to take the mindset and have the mindset of long-term relationships and value. So, number 1, get very clear on who is the person or people, depending on the size of organization. We have some clients who work with smaller companies or nonprofits. And so they might just have a single buyer in that nonprofit as an example. But if you are working with a much larger organization, let's say a billion or multi-billion-dollar organization, there might be several people. And you're right, they're not going to typically be the CEO. The CEO is not involved in buying. They've delegated to the VP or to the director or whoever it might be. And so first of all, getting clarity on who those people are and then going and having conversations with them to learn what that decision-making process looks like. Because just, that if there's a VP in one organization who's let's say the VP of ops and they're the buyer in one organization, it doesn't mean that the other company is also the VP of ops. They might have a different person with a different title who's in charge of buying the exact same thing. So it's important to know that it's not just cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all. And that's why the conversation is so important. So you can actually learn in that conversation, what does the decision-making process look like in your organization? What matters to you, right? What's the value? All these other pieces that are so important in the conversation. But again, it's about a conversation. And that's why I think a lot of people are taking the wrong approach when it comes to selling consulting services, is that they're very focused on transactions. They're very focused on making a one-way offer. But in consulting, it's two-way. You have to have a dialogue. You have to have a conversation. And you have to also think about things in terms of relationship and value, not just numbers and transactions.
For sure. One of the things that you talk about that is a key piece of this also is, this is in your consulting success blueprint that we'll tell people about later. But there's a section in there about one of the key ingredients that you absolutely have to have starting on day 1 is confidence. So you got to be confident. You got to show up confident because people buy confidence. And some other gurus have even said that sales is really a transfer of confidence, that your confidence that you can help the client becomes their certainty that you can help that client. And that's why they buy from you. When we don't have a lot of references or we don't have the mindset fully developed to be confident on day 1, maybe I haven't done a lot of consulting before. Maybe I've done consulting and then I went and did something else for 10 years. Sure. And all my references and all my successes were from 10 years ago. Whatever that is, how do we develop that mindset first? Because I'm a firm believer that you have to be confident before you have any reason to be confident.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question because you're right. Like having confidence is so important. But I remember back in the day when I was getting started and even a few years like into the business, there's times where I felt a lack of confidence or I had an experience where I just felt like I got punched in the stomach and, kicked to the side of the street. And I started questioning, like, am I really cut out to be doing this? And maybe I should be doing something else. Like, especially in Japan, I remember there's certain times over there. So it's not, I don't want people to think that, hey, if you don't have 100% confidence right now, you can't be successful in business. That's certainly not the case. Rather, that the faster that you can kind of develop confidence or you can go into conversations feeling confident because clients sense that. If you walk in and you hesitate when someone says, well, what is this going to cost or what's involved? And you go, well, I guess it's like $100,000, right? It's really hard for them to buy because they feel like, well, is this person really sure? Like, is the value really there? But if you say, we have an option at 100,000, 125, the final option here, is 210,000. You just like, if you come up with confidence right away, it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's what it is. And there's a reason for it. So back to your question, though, how do you develop confidence? Well, you develop confidence by doing things, by taking action, not by thinking about it, not by just preparing. It's going out there and doing it. So, in terms of if you don't have, let's say, a lot of clients, you don't have a lot of case studies or testimonials, well, start somewhere, right? Take on maybe a smaller project than you'd like to. If you need to even work pro bono or do something at a discounted rate, find opportunities to take action, to do what you ultimately want to achieve. Because once you do it, even though you might have some fear around it or some uncertainties, right, or unknowns, the sooner that you actually start taking action towards that, the sooner that you're going to go, yeah, I did that, or I have this experience. And maybe you didn't get paid what you wanted to do, or how much you wanted to make that time, but now you have that piece of experience, you have that case and you have that result that you can leverage. And so, even in the speaking world, right, David, it's when you want to get more speaking engagements, if you're just getting started, there's nothing wrong with giving talks for free, right? And then leveraging that and saying, yeah, I just spoke at this organization. They don't need to know that you talk for free, but you spoke to this organization. You do that a few times, you bundle that up. Now it looks like you have quite a bit of experience. And so now all of a sudden you have the confidence around speaking. You're going to feel confident also asking for a significantly higher fee.
Yeah, exactly. I know that in the speaking world, but certainly you mentioned it again in the blueprint, we have this fear. Even if we're a seasoned consultant and let's say we get an opportunity for a conversation with a healthcare organization. They say, well, Michael, this sounds fantastic. What other healthcare organizations have you worked with? And you come back with, well, none. People are like, oh my God, I hope they don't ask that. I hope, what if they find out this is the first healthcare or hospital I've ever worked with? You have a fantastic comeback to that, which is?
Well, so I got some really great advice many years ago, which is just to really don't try and compensate for weaknesses, focus on strengths. And so, yeah, if someone says that, hey, you don't have experience or do you have any experience working in healthcare and you don't, just let them know. No, I'm really excited to work with you on this. You'll be our first healthcare client. But what we're bringing to this is, working with these 10 other industries. And what our clients actually, value the most is that we can bring innovative thinking, right? Everyone's approaching things the same way in healthcare. You don't need to do that. You're going to have a competitive advantage because we're going to bring the best practices from all these other industries that are working really well and do something that's different in your industry. So I remember actually, Dave, you're making me think of back in the day working with a financial and investment client. And I remember going to the boardroom there and one of the directors, he asked me exactly that. Who else have you worked with in insurance and investment before? And I said, well, actually, this is my first time working in this space with this type of client, but I've worked with many others. And to be, very respectful, you already have the expertise around finance and investment and insurance. That's not why I'm here. I'm an expert in marketing. I'm an expert in helping you to grow and generate more leads. If you guys need more expertise around finance and investment and insurance and all that, you already have that in your walls. You have 50 plus employees. You don't need me. But I'm here because you have a lead generation and marketing problem. That's what I'm an expert in. And so that's the type of confidence that you want to bring to that question. But again, it comes back to that great advice that I got many years ago, who I don't know who gave it to me anymore, but it was just focus on your strengths, right? Don't try and compensate for weaknesses.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. What do you think about when we're talking about scaling? So let's say we're already making, pick a number, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000.
Sure.
the calendar's getting full. We're getting a little too many Marriott points happening. Now it's time to scale. I know that you do all kinds of things, a little inside baseball here about how the Michael empire and how the consulting success empire started to scale. Would you start with a course? Would you start with group coaching? Would you start with CEO roundtables or executive masterminds? Or how would you scale from consulting projects to being the CEO of a consulting business?
So there's a conversation I have with clients certainly every week, if not every day or two. And the response that I start off by sharing with everyone is that it depends. I think one of the biggest misconceptions in the marketplace is that everyone thinks like there's just one model or there's the best model because this is what everyone else is talking about. And sure, yeah, group coaching is great. Masterminds are great. All these things can be great. And we can find examples of success everywhere. But the key thing is, what do you want? And so for me, David, I'm very big on not just chasing the money or not just chasing what's trendy or popular, but rather doing things that are meaningful for me and for my lifestyle. And so I want to make sure that I spend a lot of time with my family. I want to make sure that we can travel and do the things that we want. And so I've built our business model around that. But for some people, they really love the idea of building a team and they want to work with others. And so I had a conversation with a client in New Zealand just earlier this week about that. He thrives off of working with a team. And so for him, a team model is a great way to create more leverage in his business, right? It can move him out of doing the actual work and delivery and more onto actually doing the business development that he really enjoys and thrives on. Then I spoke with another client just yesterday who is the exact opposite. They're like almost at capacity. They got into consulting specifically because they don't want to work with other team members. They don't want to manage a team. They want to do their own thing. And so for them, the team model is not appropriate. But for them, it's now a question of, well, we either look at productizing your service offering and building some really good systems and processes around that, subtracting rather than doing all this custom, consulting work that you're currently doing. What if we pulled out one specific area of it and that's just what you do, right? And so you then tend to work with more clients at a lower dollar value, but it's much more productized, there's more leverage around it. Or we go completely opposite. And instead of trying to work with, let's say, 10 clients at one time, what if you worked with 5 clients, but those clients, each one is worth significantly more? Or even what if you work the same number of clients, but instead of trying to change the model completely and like the service offerings, what if we just targeted a different level of the market? So let's say instead of targeting, let's say $50 million organizations, what if you targeted companies that were doing at least 500 million in revenue or $1 billion in revenue? And now you can do the same type of work. You can spend the same amount of time, but instead of your average fee being, let's just call it 10,000 a month, now it's 30,000 a month. So now you've scaled, you've grown, you've created more leverage without having to spend any more time. So those are just a few different ways, but certainly for the vast majority of people that we work with, it's not about creating a course. It's not about just putting something online, because my experience, my observation is it actually takes more work. It's harder to sell successfully online than it is to sell successfully offline. Not that it can't be done, but for many people, you have to be comfortable with the idea of building out landing pages and funnels. And you have to be comfortable with the idea of spending money, right, on ads. And that for a lot of people, they're not comfortable doing that. And for a lot of people, they shouldn't be doing that if they're not going to, do it properly, because you'll end up wasting a lot of money. So no right or wrong way, but what we always look at is for the specific client, what is the model that they want? What is a meaningful lifestyle for them? What do they actually want to achieve? And then based on that, identify the best business model specifically for them.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find either in your own business or with clients that you work with that rather than being a one-woman show, a one-man show, they can get a lot of leverage by bringing in junior consultants or contractors or coaches where they can be the lead thought leader? They're still the face and the voice of the business. It's still their intellectual property and their systems and processes that are being shared with the client, but they're not doing all of the manual grunt work or the intelligent grunt work. What are your thoughts on bringing in people to help you with the delivery side?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's key. We have several clients who have, built 7-figure consulting businesses through the associate model. So bring in, other contractors or consultants or associates to do the actual delivery of the work. And for them, that works really well. Others, though, don't want that, right? They don't want to manage people who are actively working with clients and essentially building a team. But we have many clients who have also built, let's say $800,000 or $1 million+ per year businesses who have just one assistant. It's like them and one assistant, but they've created the right structures. So again, no right or wrong. It just comes down to finding the right way to leverage. However, I will say that regardless of whether you want to build a team or you don't want to build a team, I believe that every consultant should be working with contractors or having, a virtual team, because you shouldn't be trying to do everything yourself. And so even if you don't want to manage people that are doing work in terms of the associate model, there's a lot of things that you're probably doing on a daily basis that you shouldn't be doing. Things that are low value tasks, things that are taking you away from spending time on higher value tasks that can generate more revenue, or even things that you could be giving to someone else. And that now creates a lot more freedom and time for you to spend with your children or loved ones or hobbies or whatever it might be. So I think there's a lot of upside for people who start to delegate, who release or just open themselves up to the mindset of, I don't need to do everything myself, even though I can, even though maybe I can do it better than someone else to begin with. I shouldn't be doing everything, because if I can pay someone $10 or $30 or $50 an hour, or even more than that in some cases, it's going to allow me to make significantly more, or to create a lot more value and time from that same, slot.
Right, exactly. Now, in your business, is it just you, or do you have some coaches and other people that work with your clients to help them with some of these other things?
Yeah. So we have 3 coaches right now. We have my cousin Sam and I, and then so there's another 2 people who are involved in the business on a regular basis, and then another person who's pretty much half-time. So, if we kind of add all that together, we're about kind of 6-7 people working on consulting success together.
Are those specialists? Like, do you have one person that just goes, okay, this is about selling consulting. This is about, we have a sales coach, we have a technology coach, we have a marketing coach, or is everyone a Swiss Army knife?
No. So our coaches are actually graduates of our coaching program. So they're people that have come through our program. They've now built very successful consulting businesses, and they want to stay involved in the community. They want to give back. They want to help. I mean, that's one thing I've observed, Dave, that I know it's true for me and many other consultants. Like, consultants are people who often want to teach. They like to help people. And so our coaches are the same. They essentially act as peer success coaches. So if our clients, like, we still work with our clients and have direct involvement and interaction, but if they want a sounding board, if they want, to get some feedback, then they can tap into those coaches. And for example, one specializes specifically in sales. Another has a lot of experience around systemization, productization, right? Building processes and teams. Another one is a real genius around messaging and relationships and marketing. So when you combine all of that and everything else that we have kind of together, plus the trainings, we're really able to support our clients and just to ensure that they're making real progress. And that's for us, like, what's most important. We don't have the goal of building a massive, massive organization with, hundreds of team members and thousands of clients all at once, because that wouldn't create the kind of lifestyle that we want to have. What we really enjoy doing is working with a small group of clients at any given time, have long-term clients as well that we work with on an ongoing basis, but really treat our clients like family. We run a family business. Sam and I are cousins, and we want to be able to have that interaction and involvement to really make a difference.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's really great. Well, I'm going to ask you 2 final questions. The last question is going to be, how do people get connected and stay connected to your empire at consultingsuccess.com? Before we get to that, though, Michael, if people were to take one central idea from our conversation today, what would you hope that would be?
Well, I'm guessing you would agree, David. It's probably the idea of imperfect action, of really allowing yourself to fail, if you want to call it that. I like to call it learning. But I believe that we all have just such tremendous potential to realize, greater levels of success. And the biggest thing holding you back right now isn't your lack of knowledge. It's not your lack of expertise. It's not the lack of some tool, and it's not the lack of money or anything else that sometimes people use as excuses. It's yourself. You have the potential. You have the ability to really reach greater heights if you lean into it. If you allow yourself to say, this might not work out the way that I'm hoping that it will, but I will actually make greater progress by trying this rather than just thinking about it.
Spot on. Could not agree more. Now, how do people get connected and stay connected to all of your resources, courses, downloads, goodies at Consulting Success? And we're also going to link this up in the show notes. So when people are listening, you're going to go over to thespeakingshow.com. Right under this episode are going to be all these resources that Michael's going to share.
Sounds good. So yeah, people can definitely connect on LinkedIn. But if you go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint, we have a 51-page blueprint all about growing a successful consulting business. that I think people will find very helpful. And as part of that, you'll get some emails where I really share, like I pull back the curtain and share my experience of building multiple consulting businesses. So you can access that at consultingsuccess.com/blueprint.
And just to intrigue people, get them a little bit curious, we're going to talk about sweating bullets on the bullet train.
We definitely are, yes. And I had that experience on more than one occasion.
Wonderful. All right, Michael Zipursky, you're awesome. Thank you for being on with us. This was totally fantastic.
David, a real pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.